All right, and we're live. It is official. We are here. Okay, so Matt here, is in my Discord, and he has a few objections to some of the stances that I've taken, and I just kind of wanted to politely go over his objections and his views, and um, really flesh out where we stand and whether it's not my position that needs to be changed, or whether um, or whether he's onto something. So let's hash it out. You have there were two topics that you brought up. The first was the NAP and the the Constitution that I drafted that essentially calls for, if a judge wants to change the Constitution or rule against the laws of the land, that their life would be forfeit. And in order for them to change the law after they're executed, they would that they no let me rephrase that. The way it's written in this Constitution is that if they made a ruling that goes against the laws of the land, they have the opportunity to write an amendment to the Constitution and have their ruling in that particular case honored, but their life is still forfeit. So they would essentially, if it was to like spare a man of his life or to right an injustice because the laws were wrong, they have that right, but it's going to cost them their lives. Because the way that this new Constitution is written, there is no judicial review. You can only enforce and inform the laws as they were written and intended by both the judiciary and enacted by the executive. So that's the idea that I proposed. You also brought up a few objections regarding the NAP. So where did you want to begin?
Hey there. First of all, thanks for having me on your show. I don't offer any real solutions to this, just objections. Sorry.
No, objections are fine. I do prefer I do actually I prefer solutions because I don't like complaining without a solution. Um, it, it's it shows me the conviction of thought when you say I disagree with something and it needs to be replaced with X or Y, and then showing why your position is stronger. Um, if you don't have solutions, that's fine. Um, but I think that if you want a stronger case for what you believe in, you need to think of it's good to have pragmatic solutions on hand to
Well,
reinforce those
definitely. Yeah,
beliefs.
that's true. Um,
Um,
about, I'll start off with the nap because that's easier.
okay.
Uh, all it is a very simple principle that says we're not going to initiate the use of force against each other. Like for instance, in like a trade, say we're cavemen and we both have needs, and like you get an extra, you find an extra, or you craft a club, right? And you craft an extra one for yourself. You got an extra club. I find a berry bush with one last berry on it. I'm not hungry, so I go and meet you, and we decide, hey, we can make this trade. It would be beneficial to each other. That's a
Okay.
voluntary transaction, right? And we trade
Yeah.
the berry for the club, and say that berry it was unsatisfactory. It was bitter or something, and you didn't like it. And you come back to me and say, "Hey, I want my club back. The berry was bad." Well,
Okay.
that's initiation of the use of force because, well, not yet. You would have to say, "Well, if you don't give me the club back, well, I'm going to hit you," or something like that.
I
Then
see.
that would be initiation of the use of force because it's threatening the use of force. It's very
All right.
simple thing. It's not like something you can design a whole government and society on top of. You can live by it, but you wouldn't get very far unless you were living with a bunch of people like-minded and never violate the nap.
Yeah, and that's sort of my problem with the obsession of the nap as if it is something that you can form policy around. Because when you have the libertarian types advocating for the NAP, the assumption is that the NAP is somehow objective and enforceable, and it's the exact opposite. And the reason that we have laws, societies, and governments is not for the common man or the decent human being. The reason that we have laws in the first place as necessary evils is because of the indecent, because of the
Right.
criminal, because of the people who would, on a whim, violate NAP. So in my mind, it is a very utopian ideal that either ignores human reality, or B is openly subverting reality to essentially, how would you say, to essentially try to either evade the consequences of your own actions, or tell people, yeah, exactly. This is news says law itself is NAP violation. Law is
Well,
a threat of violence from the state.
I kind
And,
of disagree with you there about the is in itself a violation because you can get with somebody. Say we're in a vacuum and there's only two people in our area and we sort of own this area. Let's put aside the ownage part, but we both are here. We're both living together, sort of, and you know, we agree on something. We agree we're not gonna f each other over, right? And then the third
mhm.
person comes along. We're not sure if they're gonna f us over. We're not sure if they're gonna violate the nap or not. So we agree to have this guy over, and we all agree to have an arbiter to enforce contract, right? Borders and contract. That's what the government's for.
Well, yeah, that's just government at at a smaller scale.
Right,
I
exactly. It's
mean,
a microcosm of government.
yeah. So this is kind of what I'm getting at is whenever you mention the NAP and you bring it um to its absolute form, he's not wrong. The law is a threat of force from the state. It's saying you cannot do X. Well, why is it that society agreed we cannot do X?
Well, society consists of everybody who's like in our little vacuum, the two or three people.
Well, so the best I can say about um, the NAP is that it seems redundant to say that you're going to build a society and interact honestly in that society.
That's true. At
And
a certain point, it just falls apart because there's too many people, and it's like Stefan Molyneux said this. What the statistic was, or whatever it was, it is successful, but only to like 100 and something people. And then at
yeah,
that point,
it's
after that, it breaks down. It doesn't work anymore.
well, it's I think that I think I know what study he's referring to, and that number actually keeps getting larger and larger. It started at 100, then it went up to like 300, and and I think it flatlined at like the 500 range. Like 500 is the maximum number of people that you can have and still maintain that close knit cultural. No, 500 is the number of people that you can consciously consider to be a close, intimate friends. Like that is your your home and hearth. That's like your how do I
Interesting.
put this?
I heard it was 300. I
Yeah.
don't know. That's the number of names that you can remember is 300.
Okay. But yeah,
like on
the
average.
close, yeah, the close knit community thing is it started at 100, then it creeped up to like 300, and that's interesting you bring up because I'm a Latter Day Saint, and we have this system where um, our churches are divided because the church itself is headed in Salt Lake, and then we have stakes which cover larger areas, and the stakes are broken up into individual wards, which are like the local community level. Coincidentally, nearly every time they redraw boundaries or change the dynamics of an individual ward, there might be X number of people in the ward itself, but when it comes to active membership, like within a ward, it's always within that 300 400 range of that close knit that threshold of people that you can consider to be your close and intimate community.
Yeah, and
And
it's
that's
not even
always,
that related, is it?
yeah, I'm
That's interesting.
you see it's not because they're literally just drawing lines on streets. I don't think that they do this consciously. I think it's something that's a natural byproduct of knowing what is good for each group of people. Now, and the reason I know that is because it's not based on the total membership of a ward, technically. It's only when you take into account the active membership. It's always within that communal threshold of people that you as a human being are capable of relating to intimately. So that's why I'm aware of that statistic, is because there's a correlation there between how that reality is reflective in how my faith is practiced on a logistical scale, and I found that uh, fairly interesting.
Yeah.
Um, so, so again, my problem with the nap isn't that it's a good idea or a philosophy per se, but trying to enforce it as a political doctrine is problematic. It's not. I don't consider it to be an adhesive political doctrine, and I don't see how anyone could.
I don't view it as like something you can build a whole society or government or whatever on. Just as like a reflection of the golden rule is all it is for me. You
Well,
know,
yes, and
don't do unto
I
others that
understand. I,
you
I
know.
I understand that, and I get it. So, explain to me, like you quoted Molyneux, and I actually like most of Molyneux's stuff. I don't disagree with much of what he says. I don't understand why when anything bad happens, there's this added critique of, oh, this violates NAP. It, we're
Well,
at a
when
point
something
where,
violates MAP, it shows something fundamentally wrong with it. Like, say, the, when something violates NAP, it means somebody's fucking somebody over. Excuse me. Sorry
yeah,
for my language. I'll try to watch it. But that's
yeah, don't.
basically what violating NAP means. Somebody didn't make the agreement that they're doing what they're doing, and so they're initiating the use of force.
Well, and I understand that, and 9 times out of 10, he's right. The problem is when you start to realize that in order for you to have any influence, any true power, any in order to go anywhere like where we might be able to reform society in a more decent and, dare I say, holy fashion, it's going to require us to assume some of the tactics of those who have wronged us. And it's not simply because we ourselves are tyrants or that we desire to be tyrants, but the
Well,
laws of
each of us
power.
has a shadow, but that's another subject.
Well, I'm sorry, but the laws of power don't lie. And if you don't interact honestly within those paradigms, you will remain powerless.
Yeah, that's true. I
So,
mean,
and
it's hard. It's hard beyond like a small group of people. That's all I'm saying. To even use the nap as a fundamental driving force of
well,
a
and my
anything.
problem is not only is it useful in this only in like small individual interactions, but my problem is when they start using it as a guide stick for policy and tactic. Once we get there, you've lost me because we're at a point where the NAP has already been violated
Right, right,
repeatedly and it
right.
should
'Cause
not apply again.
you're
So
already in this system, in the stew of violation.
so I guess my main problem with NAP is, why do libertarians insist on living to a standard their enemies won't reciprocate? That's I guess that's primarily the main crunch here. And whenever you do anything that would give you more power, influence, and um, an advantage, your enemies will immediately turn to you, because this is what they've done to us repeatedly, and say, "Oh no, you're not living up to your own principles. You are you're violating the NAP. How dare you?" And then you just have your own side eating you from within, and
Right,
that can't be healthy.
right.
So um, I know that you said that you can't offer any solutions, but is there, what solution is there as far as the NAP is concerned, and how do you address that?
Well, we're living in the stew of wrong. Let's say everything's violated from the first taxation. From taxation on, where everything is violated. We're not getting out of that. And the nap is a reflection of the golden rule: treat others how you would want to be treated. So that's how you do it. Just treat others how you want to be treated. If you see a politician stealing from one person, giving to another, that's not how you don't want your money stolen by a politician to give to someone else. You want to be able to do charity on your own terms, you know?
Yeah, and I do sort of
I'm not
agree with
I'm
that
not trying
notion.
to go full Stefan Molyneux. I mean, I guess I don't live up to the I guess I'm giving it up. I'm not going for the nap thing. Okay,
Okay,
the nap thing
but
is a reflection of the golden rule, and it
well,
only works fundamentally for a small group of people. And the solution is just be excellent to others.
okay.
I
Well,
know
and,
it's
and
not
that
very
brings us to our
helpful.
that sort of brings us to our second topic. But before we go there, Roy says there's a community of vets that live by the rules of NAP, sort of, that live like nomads in the Rocky Mountains, and
And it might work
that,
for them, but that's like one small microcosm in
well, it
billions
is.
of
But
people.
I need to throw in the fact that they're veterans, and they're most likely armed, and it's good for people who have military combat experience who are armed to live in like a nomadic community and watch out for one another.
That's
That
true.
works. An armed society is a polite society,
Yeah.
and I agree with that 100%. Um, this is news. The good guy doesn't always win, but you can't try to fix nature by adding structures. Yeah,
Right.
to me, that's a I don't know if NAP is in and of itself a natural structure, or that I see those who are advocating for NAP trying to add structures to nature. I see this inverted. Like when I see those advocating for it push forward, and that's really part of the real problem that I'm having with that whole concept. I don't know what white stallion is, so I'm going to I'm assuming that might be the name of the community, the white stallion of the NAP veterans, which is pretty awesome. So back to the other issue that you had, the one about the sacrificial judges.
Right. This sacrificial system. It's allowing someone to sacrifice themselves is euthanasia, right? Sort of.
Oh, no, I
No.
wouldn't. Look, the reason why I set up the judicial sacrifice as the amendment to the Constitution, or to my proposed Constitution, is because it would prevent activist judges from taking the laws into their own hands. And it would give the people the opportunity to respond to the actions of these judges, meaning that the chance for malfeasance would drop significantly. And so when you compare it to euthanasia for someone's own health, that's not a fair and accurate statement.
I I
It's
didn't
asking
mean health.
someone.
I didn't mean health. I meant well, it's yeah, it's sacrifice, and it might reduce the amount of activist judging, but or what you said it would reduce. But
Well, the
yeah,
entire virtue and philosophy behind um, asking judges to sacrifice themselves in order to uphold their personal views is the fact that you can't, as a society, call anything a virtue, or something that the nation regards as a principle, without the violation of that principle itself having the ultimate cost.
that's true. Yeah.
That I am a huge proponent of the Roman ethic. I believe that as a society, we have an obligation to demand the things that we say that we cherish, that we demand that those things which we cherish, when they're violated, to carry the ultimate price. Because if you're not willing to kill for it, you don't really believe in it. If you're not willing to die for it, you don't really believe in it. And we've degenerated, and because we lack this attitude, we've degenerated on gun rights. We've degenerated on the value of the vote, apparently. We've degenerated on the rate of taxation that we're willing to take on. We've degenerated on the how long representatives should serve in government. We're not we've degenerated in terms of false accusations and slander and libel. We don't demand blood for anything.
That's
So,
true,
and
yes.
and here's my problem. The response to that is, well, the sanctity of life is also a virtue, and I have to disagree. I disagree. The holding the sanctity of life as a virtue in and of itself subverts any other virtue you could possibly claim to hold. Because if you're not willing to die or kill for a virtue, you don't have it. Not in, and it's not just you individually, it's the entire society in which you live. So I'm a huge proponent of capital punishment, death penalty, under the auspice of these are virtues and these are principles that we stand for, and the violation thereof will carry the ultimate price. And that is how you enforce a Roman ethic. That is how you get diverse and ethnically different people to homogenize. That is how you get them into a peaceful, uh, um, homogeneous culture, both genetically and socially. That's how it's done. It's done by the strict enforcement of the law
Yeah,
and
it's
what the
in the
law
Old
expects.
Testament. That's an Old
And
Testament. You see that kind of thing all the time in there.
yes, oh,
Well,
absolutely.
I've got an objection though. The way I see it is, if you're if you got if you're sacrificing people, right? This
Well, you're not sacrificing people. They are offering up their own lives in violation of what the people have established as
yes,
status quo.
they're offering their own life, but you
Correct.
condemn the system. Therefore, in by association, you're sacrificing them. You're allowing them to sacrifice themselves. You're sacrificing them. Thou shalt not kill extends even so far. It's unbelievable. It's like you can't call your brother an idiot because that's in a way killing them, right? That's you call someone an idiot, that's killing them in a way. But
Mm,
no,
I think
no
that
man
was
has the
more.
right to take the life of another. That's God's domain. Even if yes, we do go to war and to protect our borders, and we do kill rapists and all this kind of stuff, and but still, it's not. I don't know. I don't know if running the state orderly and efficiently is worth taking lives.
Then why did God command it in the Old Testament? Like, why
That's
was
the old
and
covenant. It's been fulfilled by Jesus Christ.
okay, and after the death of Jesus Christ, I know that there's this notion that God somehow changed his mind or his character after Christ was resurrected. He didn't. And one of the best indications of that is after his resurrection, and he left Peter in charge to manage the affairs of the church. Do you recall the story of Ananias and Sapphira?
No, I don't.
Well, let me remind you then. The story of Ananias and Sapphira is they were commanded to sell their property and to report the value and price of that property to the head of the church, Peter. So they went into Peter's office, and they had already arranged within themselves that they were going to tell Peter that their property sold for a lower value, and they were going to keep the net. And they did this. They went into Peter and said, our property was sold at X dollars when it was actually sold at Y. Peter called their bluff, declared bullshit, and Ananias, who went in first and reported this amount, fell down dead. They removed Ananias's body, brought in his wife, and she said, where is Ananias? Oh, you'll be meeting him shortly. How much was this? Did you sell your property for? And she gave him the wrong amount. She also fell dead. So this notion that after the ascension of Christ, that there was going to be no moral enforcement from the taking of someone else's life. And by the way, this is not attributed to a divine, to like, this was Peter's doing. This was the word of Peter, the word of God through Peter, uh, essentially telling someone, no, your life is now forfeit, be gone. And that was a significant moment because it meant that Christ was Jehovah and he's still Jehovah. And everything that he expected from the Old Testament still stands. He still expects his people to maintain the integrity of their civilization. That's never going to change. So, and there's another false conception about the death penalty in the Old Testament and the association of guilt and whether or not if you kill them they're forgiven and whatnot. The death penalty in the Old Testament was for one purpose and one purpose only. It was not to assign damnation. It wasn't to assign guilt. It was not to declare this person unsavable. The point of the death penalty in the Old Testament was always to, and I'm quoting, put this evil out from among you. Meaning, if you permit this to fester in your society, it will eventually overtake you if you do not keep it in check. This is a virtue that you need to physically enforce with force. End of story. So I'm not buying the argument that because we're under this quote unquote new covenant, that ethic has ever been commanded to change, ever.
I will have to think about that and read the Bible some more.
Please do. I will never condemn anyone studying the scriptures more in their own personal studies. That will always be a benefit to everyone. But that is my understanding of the scriptures, and that is my understanding of what a good and Christian ethic should be, especially when we have to consider hard questions like the death penalty, law enforcement, the purpose and role of our prison system. Like, I personally, I'm disgusted by privatized prison system. To me, that's a crock of shit. Like, if you have in your society of prisons that are filling to the brim, at what point do you not realize, hey, maybe the government and society at large should be paying for these failures, or acknowledging that this is a bad thing, and if we don't alleviate ourselves of it, then we're going to be in trouble.
Yeah,
Why don't
setting
we
up those
try to cut down our
incentives.
debt by, you know,
You're
yeah,
breaking
we're
up. I can't hear you.
of making it like something that we can. Am I still breaking up?
No, you're good now.
Hello?
You're good now. I
All
can hear
right.
you.
But no, of
No, you're breaking up again.
off from those who need the most. Hang on 1 second. All right, is it good now?
Yes.
Okay, I see the problem. Okay, there it is. It should be better now. Are we good?
Yes. Good.
Okay.
So,
All right. But no, I'm convinced that that privatizing our prison system is just us kind of passing the buck and not realizing what dire straits our society is in. And I
that's
think
true.
that is
Yeah.
always something that's something that we should be aware of. And I don't and it's one of those things where if you're spending, or if you have to spend X amount of money for the room and board of criminals, it's kind of like being in a living organism and and turning off your pain receptors.
Yeah.
And but yeah, but most people don't think that would be a bad thing. That's a horrible thing. Pain teaches you the limits of your interaction with the world. And that's what we've done, is we've numbed ourselves to the negative effects of having and doing and permitting bad things. And so when it comes to the prison system, I think that it does need to be taxpayer funded. And we need to review the amount that we're paying into and saying, holy shit, do we really need to be paying this much?
Wait, I thought
And
it was taxpayer funded. It was just privatized.
no,
No.
okay. Let me rephrase. We give private companies a incentive. These are private companies. They and what they do is they're reimbursed based on the amount of population in the prison system. So the more people in, the more reimbursement they
Oh
get.
yeah, the incentive system set up.
Yeah. And so I'm sitting here going, how the fuck is that good?
It's not.
No, it's not good at all. It's like, not only are you numbing your body to the pain, you're pumping in. You're essentially giving yourself ecstasy, and you're expected to function properly as a body. That doesn't work. No, you if it when let's face it, when an individual goes to jail or prison, and there's any societal factor that contributed to that, and it happens repeatedly, you might notice a pattern. There might be something that you might want to address.
Yeah.
Or let's say when someone, or let's say they all come from a certain demographic, or they come from similar social circumstances, like, for example, no father in the home. because that's a very popular one. Um, Society needs to be able to receive those messages and respond accordingly, and in a timely manner that was reflective of the fact that we acknowledge that they exist. And that's really what's that relationship between us and our fellow men and the lowest of our society, that all of those sensations have been cut off. Like, we are not aware of what's going on and why people are
and,
going to prison.
and I think
And
there's vested interests in keeping it that way.
and that is unchristian. That's grossly
That's true.
unchristian. It is a and that's something that needs to be addressed. And part of the reason that has been allowed to happen is because, again, we have this mentality of the sanctity of life, and that has been co-opted into, oh, prisons for profit, in a very subtle and diabolical way.
Yeah, and let's look at the drug thing. No, the drug abolition and the categories of drugs and all this. It's supposedly for the well-being of the society, so society doesn't isn't a drug addict. But that's sort of taking away your personal agency, replacing it with this.
I'm actually not morally opposed to drug prohibition. Um, I do let me put it to you another way. I think that drugs need to be marketed in a way that they are used for pretty much anything but pleasure. I, um, because people like to say that apothecaries back in the day would, have pretty much everything on the shelf. And yeah, that's true. But the prices for the product on the shelf were astronomical because they were used um, for professional and for research purposes. So they were astronomically priced. Yes, you could buy them on the free market and in open air, but the purpose of those materials was wildly different than they are today. Um,
You're partially for drug abolition
well,
or
absolutely, and
drug
and, and it's
or force.
and and the ethos of that is also a part of the second commandment, to love thy neighbor as thyself. Now, the reason why it's phrased that way is because epistemologically, uh, Christians are not skeptics, because a skeptic is someone who, and I know this is straw manning skeptics. I acknowledge this right off the bat, but I can't help but notice that if are you trained in epistemology at all?
No,
Okay,
I think I've read the
epistemology.
word a couple times.
Okay, epistemology is essentially the study and the study of the nature of knowledge. Essentially, what do you know and how do you know?
Oh
Are the
yeah,
prime
like philosophy, right?
It's the philosophy of philosophies.
Okay.
Is it is literally, what do we think and why do we think, um, kind of philosophy. It's almost esoteric in its nature, but no, it's epistemology is the question of how do we know what we know and when does belief become knowledge. And just to give you the short end of the story, they have never divided crossed that threshold technically as to when belief becomes knowledge. Um, the skeptic a skeptic essentially concedes that they can't know anything because they don't know if any of their beliefs are wrong.
Huh.
And the problem with that is, when you when you start off on this purity spiraling form of questioning, and because that's essentially what it is the first question you ask, or the first question that the professor asks is, are any of the beliefs that you hold wrong? And most people, out of ignorant, humble intellectualism, will say, well, of course of course, some of my beliefs are wrong. Certainly, I can't be all-knowing. I can't know all things. I can't be 100% correct. And then it devolves into a conversation where you essentially have to concede that you can't know and you don't know anything. What the Christian has to do is finish that process and then go back to the first question. Are any of the beliefs that you hold wrong? Well, no. Wait, how can you say that none of the beliefs you hold are wrong? Well, if they're wrong, how could I know that they're wrong? That's the answer. You cannot know that any of your beliefs are wrong if you can't know anything. And so, obviously, the skeptic is going to say, the skeptic will respond, well, and they're going to start interrogating your beliefs. Well, you're wrong here. How do you know? And once you ask the skeptic, how do you know that my obviously wrong belief is wrong? You have to agree that there is an external universe from which you, as two human beings, can interact. So, in that regard, when we apply this technique to the second commandment, which is, "Thou shalt love thy neighbor as thyself," the commandment does not read, "Thou shalt love thy neighbor as they wish to love themselves." You understand what I'm saying?
Yes, I think so.
You only have an obligation to love your neighbor as you would love yourself. No one in their right mind wishes to be a drug addict if you're living a good Christian life. And to love your neighbor as yourself, you would promote a society where drug addiction is at an absolute minimum low. You don't wish for people to be homeless. You don't wish for women to be prostitutes. You don't wish for someone to be mugged on the street. And so you promote a society that holds these values. You do not love someone as they wish to be loved. You love them as you would care for yourself.
Yeah, it's love to say no too. Love to say no, like to a kid who wants another.
Oh, absolutely. And so when we get to the drug debate, and the question is, should addiction be a free choice? And as Christians, we have to ask ourselves, is that me loving my neighbor? The answer is no. Allowing your neighbor to be an addict is not loving them.
That's true. Yeah.
That might sound anti-libertarian. I don't care. I do not give a damn.
Yeah. It's
Now, to be clear, do I have friends who participate in the devil's lettuce? Absolutely. Do I love them? Absolutely. Do I want them to stop? Not necessarily. There are some of them who handle their shit, but they have to do so against the societal norm and expectation, and that's okay. But that still has to be the way that it is, and I'm not going to. I don't have the energy to pretend otherwise.
yeah, I'm starting to lean toward that direction too. See this Roy X message? No, because I'm German and we're never wrong ever.
Dude, Roy, I just have to tell you, I was searching my genealogy. Now, my genealogical line connects to the growth or the Groth line, and I was searching my patriarchal line all the way back through the Groths. It turns out that our patriarchs go all the way back to in the 1300s to a family group called the Groots, who were descended from essentially ancient Prussia. And if you look in the Norse and Swedish documents of these families, they come from Deutschland, which is the Norse and Swedish way of saying Deutschland. So my patriarchs uh, come from ancient Prussia. They're also and but they intermarried with a bunch of Swedish, the Abramson line down the way. So I have a nice Nordic Prussian influence from my father's side, and the other side is Italian. If you think that being right was a monopoly, I combined the worst two bloodlines. I am always right, and I understand your dilemma, Roy. I understand it completely. We are Groots, indeed. And you know what? That is exactly what I told my wife. Babe, I just learned that I am Groot.
That's
So
funny.
it was like it was amazing to read, because of my faith. I do genealogy work, so we can get to know who we are and where we came from, and all of that. So it was interesting to go over my genealogy and learn that this Groot family from I believe the area now is modern Belgium. But who they were is they were artisanal blacksmiths, and they were strange because even as early as the 1300s, they made sure that all of their children could read and write in Germanic and the French languages. And this was in a time period where literacy was not common at all. Yet these
That's
artisan
impressive.
blacksmiths would always educate their children in reading and letters, and they kept that tradition all the way to through Sweden, and then they migrated from Sweden to the Americas. They actually changed their name to honor the new blacksmiths who took on their who allowed them to continue their trade under his tutelage, because this was their ancestral art, and they had no way to market that, and so they were taken on by another blacksmith who trained them and provided them a way to make a living. And you read about how back at those times that it was actually noted by royalty that three major blacksmithing families were leaving the Prussian land to go into the north. So it was very interesting to read about and discover that part of my past.
Yeah, that is interesting.
So yes, I am Groot.
Does that have any relation to the movie?
None whatsoever.
Okay.
None whatsoever. It's just funny. So so I know it's an unpopular opinion. So when it comes to things like the drug war and especially pornography, I could not be I could not be any more against porn than I already am. I've done a video in the past where I basically expose Pornhub, where I'm like, dude, Pornhub doesn't give a shit about your free speech at all. It's not something that they live by. It's something that they virtue signal towards, like once every 3 months or so. Like some banned video will be uploaded by some rando, and the Pornhub will keep it up. But Pornhub itself, it's their parent company is centered in Luxembourg, which is responsible for all the draconian laws from the EU and their censorship codes, which is why one of the reasons why Britain did the successful Brexit. It wasn't just trade; it was free speech as well. Um, so no, Pornhub does. And by the way, if you go to Pornhub on Twitter, their account is protected. Like you cannot comment or on any of Pornhub's tweets unless you are someone that they choose to follow. And the reason they did that was in the response to one hashtag. It took one hashtag for Pornhub to completely shutter their Twitter following.
Yeah, what was that?
Hashtag traffic hub.
Huh? Traffic.
And
That's no good.
traffic hub because there have been more than a few cases where they have been caught supporting videos of women who have been sex trafficked, and they knew about it, and for extended periods of time refused to take the videos down until the law stepped in. It took the application of force for Pornhub to acknowledge and remove content that was clearly exploiting women who had been sold into sex slavery.
Yeah.
And so, in that's again why I have to oppose NAP. I have to. It's no it's not serving the intended purpose or goal as a wider scope of a philosophy or as a doctrine. It doesn't allow us to move in ways that we need to. All right. So Roy also commented, "You are also screwed. My family are the people under the trees. My mom did her research and were able to trace back to the fall of Rome. Our family are soldiers or mercs fighting his life." Yeah. And I will sell you your fighting tools as long as you need them. I will repair your armor, sir.
Nice.
All right. So, was there anything else that you wanted to ask or bring up?
No, that was all I had on my mind.
All right. Well, this was a nice and short, very to the point. I appreciate it. If there's anything else that you want to bring up in the future, I will gladly have you on. By the way, ladies and gentlemen, a link to Matt's channel is in the description. So please feel free to check him out and see what he's all about. Thank you for coming by and listening. As always, do you have any promotion that you would like to put out there, Matt?
Nope. And I appreciate you having me on your show and sharing my link.
All right, and anytime to support someone who's engaged. So we're going to close with that, ladies and gentlemen. As always, stay carnal and God bless.